Okay, let's meet Frank and Colleen Stiriti. Images of life, change, and beauty, photographs, poetry, and art, selections from the works of Fran Dalton. In 2019, Frank and Colleen Stiriti moved to Newburyport, where Colleen had grown up. Frank had retired from sales and management positions in the printing industry, and Colleen retired from the commercial insurance industry. They set out to try and fulfill a commitment to promote and preserve the work of Newburyport artist and poet and close family friend since the early 1960s, Fran Dalton. Frank and Colleen organized and viewed thousands of slides, scanned nearly 2,000, from which over 200 were chosen to appear in their book, Images of Life, Change and Beauty, Photographs, Poetry, and Art, selections from the works of Fran Dalton, Newburyport, Mass. Frank and Colleen continue to research and preserve images and artifacts relating to Fran's life. This is their first book. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, welcome, and please tell me if it stops working. I need both hands to look at my notes. Welcome. Colleen and I are very pleased that you have joined us this morning to learn more about our recently published book, Images of Life, Change, and Beauty. We will share how we came to commit to try to promote and preserve Fran Dalton's legacy and the process we went through to accomplish our goal. We have prepared a 5-minute slide presentation with a few of the images that appear in the book. Colleen will present some biographical facts about Fran. We will conclude with a Q&A. Images of Life, Change, and Beauty is a book of photography with a sprinkling of poems and art, all by local artist Fran Dalton. Fran, a self-taught film photographer, sculptor, poet, artist, writer, was an extraordinary individual and a friend to many. We are pleased to have published a book which is a sampling of her work. I contributed the technical piece of the project, the scanning of nearly 2,000 slides and the organization and preparing of the files for print. Colleen and I worked together on basic layout and design and decisions about content. We worked with a subsidy publisher, Randall Publishing of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, who guided the book through production. Before turning it over to Colleen, I would like to say that the book would not have happened without Colleen's commitment and drive. She spent countless hours poring over many cartons of correspondence, writings, poems, and sketches, and viewed many thousands of slides. Her enthusiasm for what we were doing was clear to all she discussed our project with.
I can tell you that a book would not exist today without Frank's technical ability and his willingness to learn. And he learned how to do things, and he responded when something had to be done that he had no idea how to do it, and he did it. So I do not have those abilities whatsoever. So it was really a joint effort that we worked on together, and a learning experience, I would say, for both of us. So our initial goal was simply to do a coffee table book of some of Fran's photographs. Then Fran's poems and sketches were added at a later time. We did not attempt to do a biography because we feel much more research will need to take place if it's to happen. Fran had a very wonderfully rich life, and it needs to be examined in detail before a biography. However, we did put a few instances of different biographical facts that we have, and most importantly, we did do a glimpse in her own words, her thoughts on her journey to transgender. So that is part of the book as well. Also included in the book is a copy of the letter that Fran sent to friends and family in November of 1989 when she was announcing to everyone that she would, from then on, be living as a transgender woman and remaining in Newburyport, in the town she loved, city she loved, city she loved, and with the people she loved. Now, also, not appearing in the book, we want to share some facts that Fran's background of growing up and that type of thing, because we found there's a lot of misconceptions that we hear about Fran, and we'd like to just have some things clear. Fran was born in 1928. Her parents were hardworking Irish immigrants. Fran said of them that they were the salt of the earth. And he grew up in Lawrence, Mass. He went to Central Catholic High School. He graduated in 1945, immediately joined the Navy, and went to the colleges in like Holy Cross, BC, and UMass to train as they called them civil cadets at the time. So he then was discharged in 1948 from the Navy and graduated from Merrimack College in 1951. The next year, he obtained a secondary teaching certificate. We have few details of Fran's life up to 1960, but we do know that she was a professional diver for rescue operations, and she also dived for salvage, and I think possibly that is what drew her to Newburyport, where she lived in a boatyard for a number of years. It was diving that actually introduced her to photography. She was captivated by the life underwater, and she wanted to find a way to be able to capture it with a camera. So she devised a camera that she could use to do that. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of her life as a self-taught photographer, committed to sharing her experiences with all of us. She managed in Newburyport in the early years by doing odd jobs, including gardening, custodial work, that type of thing. She rode a bicycle for a number of years with her camera strapped to the handlebars, ready to capture an interesting scene. As her photographs drew attention, she was able to support herself through her work. Fran displayed and sold photographs in area galleries, was published occasionally in magazines, including Yankee Magazine. She had some Plum Island pictures in there. She was able eventually, as her photographs were becoming more well-known, she was commissioned frequently for both portrait and commercial work, and she could support herself at that point on her work. She had very little in the way of possessions, but she had a rich life from her connection with nature and people of all ages from all walks of life. Fran passed in 2010, having lived her last 20 years as her true self, and was delighted to, as she said, and this is a quote, give Frances, with an E, her place in the sun. She insisted there be no service. In 2012, however, there was a retrospective of her work at the Newburyport Public Library in her honor. Take a sip of water. A question we are often asked is how we happen to have been entrusted with Fran's life's work. Fran was a close friend of our family from the early 1960s when she arrived in Newburyport and throughout her life. I was 16 when we met Fran. My sister Carrie was, I think, 10, and my brother Dean was 8. So we actually had a lot of the formative years, especially my brother and sister, with Fran, and Fran was a really beautiful part of our family. As Fran's health deteriorated, she became concerned about the fate of her collection of her work, and she asked my sister Carrie in 2001 to accept ownership of her collection in the hope not only that her work would be preserved, but that it would be promoted and become known and appreciated by a wide and diverse audience. We decided, when we were thinking about how to hopefully make this happen, we decided that a book was probably the best vehicle in order to try that, to have that happen. Of course, we didn't know how to do a book, but we just kind of jumped in. But we made the commitment at that point, and the journey, although that was 2001, family life and full-time employment just did not allow for the time that would be necessary and the commitment necessary at that point to go through Fran's photography, poems, sketches, et cetera, et cetera. And so that all of that was put in storage in 2006, it was put in storage early on at 2001, and it didn't come out of storage until 2016. And that's when we were going to begin to start working on it. So let's see, in 2018, Frank and I came to the decision to retire early. That was a time that we thought we would be able to devote to the book and to getting that published. So we decided to move to Newburyport. It was number one. I'm not sure which was 1 or 2, but one was to be closer to family, and the other was to work on Fran's book. So once we were in Newburyport in the fall of 2019, we began in earnest to sort and organize and label boxes of negatives, contact sheets, documents, equipment, thousands of slides, and Fran's artwork. As far as reaching out to people, we decided to take it slow, considering that we really didn't have a firm plan yet. On my first visit to the archives at the Newburyport Library to check out their collection of Fran's photographs, I had no intention of mentioning the project. But that changed when I started to go down the stairway to the archives. Fran's photographs were displayed on the wall going down to the archives. They were greeting me, and I took that right then and there as a sign to jump in and get going. It was a message. So we did. That day, Sharon Spieldiner and Margin Skip Motes were working on research. And when I mentioned our intentions, they expressed interest in our project. They became guides for us, explaining, suggesting, and encouraging us from that day on. Little did we know that by March 2020, with the arrival of restrictions due to COVID, the opportunity to meet people would be on hold for quite some time. We made the best of it. As I began reading Fran's correspondence, checking out her address books and Christmas card lists, and putting together a list of people to contact when the pandemic ended. I created a folder for each of those who appeared to be in Fran's circle. Some became quite full with photos, notes, and newspaper articles. Every time I found a connection, into the folder it went. It often took a while to figure out who the people were. Sir Tom and Lady Deborah, on sabbatical in England, sent Franny a letter in January of 1990, a beautiful letter acknowledging Fran's letter informing friends and family of her decision to live as a transgender woman. I enjoyed the challenges and was delighted when a mystery was solved. As the COVID restrictions lightened, Frank and I began meeting with Fran's friends. Sometimes it was a chance encounter on the library steps and a brief story about an exchange with Fran, sometimes an email, sometimes a phone conversation. But my favorite by far were the times we gathered around the table and heard story after story of Fran. There are a lot of highlights on our journey, but none more meaningful than the people we have met and the friendships we have been fortunate to make.
Still works. Before, during, and after COVID, we spent many hours choosing slides to be scanned and considered for the book. We started out initially by setting up our screen and slide projector from the 1980s and clicking through slides one by one. It soon became clear that our different approach to this task was not going to work. Colleen was quick and decisive. Yes, no, yes, no. I was much, much too indecisive. It was a terribly long process. The decision was made in April 2020 to split duties. Colleen would review slides and choose those she wanted me to consider, and then I could take my time deciding if I agreed. Actually, I scanned most of what she chose. The decision to accept the photo to possibly be in the book was made after viewing the scan or when viewing a print that we had made. As soon as Colleen chose 12 slides, I loaded my transparency unit and scanned. I just wanted to scan. And I had a great system, filing system. I'd love to share it with all of you. You could come to our home and as soon as I shouldn't divert from what I was saying. Where am I? As soon as I already said that, how can I forget? Colleen's approach actually, Colleen's approach to choosing which slide to scan, she would take slides, go to a window in the workroom, Fran's room, hold them up to the light, yay, nay, done. This new approach saved a lot of time and possibly our marriage. Just kidding. I scanned nearly 2,000 slides from which we chose 230 photos used in the book, along with 24 drawings and 20 of Fran's poems. We put the images in 60 different categories initially. We chose photos from about half of them. We kept narrowing down choices for the book. We grouped them by themes, clotheslines, children at play, people at work, and many more. And, of course, photographs of downtown Newburyport before and after restoration. We would now like to show you a 5-minute presentation which includes 25 photographs of the 230 plus that are in the book. Most of the photos in the book were taken in Newburyport and are a mixture of street photography, local notables, events, landscapes, portraits, and ordinary people doing ordinary things. Most were taken in mid-1960s through early 1990s. Of special interest are the photographs of downtown Newburyport. Wow, Colleen. Did Fran ever say what she liked about Newburyport?
Thanks for asking, Frank. Page 1 of the book has a lot. First, picture of the firehouse.
Page 1 of the book.
Picture of the firehouse on the front of the first page. It's beautiful. That was Christmas time. We lived right up the street, so we enjoyed all the Christmas decorations. Okay.
Title.
This is what I like about Newburyport by Fran Dalton.
Lemonade stands. Lemonade stands.
The tangle of bikes outside a busy 5 and 10 cent store.
Pigtails and dimples.
The call of geese in the night.
Swans in the pond.
The gentle east wind in summer.
Old square houses with old windows, bent chimneys, clothesline poles, warped picket fences, old trees.
Frills of iron on fences, lights, and signs.
Apartments and studios hidden in ancient buildings.
Leaves on brick walks.
Stories about olden day incidents.
Weather-worn faces by F.M. Dalton, 1966.
Bethany? Thank you. Thank you, Bethany. Fran's slides are in more than 50 loose leaf binders, plus hundreds of slide boxes. Most are labeled by subject. Some are not. Most of the slides themselves do not have the place or person's identity noted. One day, we envision a community who's who get-together with a large screen projecting photographs of people and the audience chiming in with names and perhaps a memory or two. In the meantime, if you recognize people in the book, please send us a note or email. If you have a memory that you would like to share, we would love to hear from you. Our contact sheet information, our contact information is on a handout that we'll leave at some place. And again, we would like to hear from any of you. We hope each of you has heard something here today about Fran Dalton that you were not aware of. And we hope that you would like to learn more about a very special and talented individual who touched many. Thank you.
We're open for any questions that you might have about Fran. I should use this, right? We have artwork that Fran did, boxes of poems, boxes of sketches, cartoons, just children's stories, historical movies that Fran put together about events and that type of thing, which we haven't even gone there. I mean, these are reel-to-reels and that type of thing. And just so many things that are about community and are about Newburyport and people, just people. Fran loved Newburyport and loved the people here. And I think that is clear by Fran staying here after transgendering. And she originally, I don't think we said this, but originally her plan was to go through this process and then move somewhere where no one knew her and live her life as a woman among other people. And she just decided she couldn't do that. She wanted to be here and she wanted to be with her people. And so she just decided that she was going to do it. And it took, obviously, courage to do that. But it also shows her love of people, of neighbors. And there's one quote in this letter that she sent to everybody, and it says, I don't have enemies. All I have are neighbors who are living next to me and being part of my life. It's more eloquent than that, but the idea being how important that was to her. And she stayed, and she did fine with it. Not to say everybody accepted it, but I think that generally speaking, especially when you consider it was in the 1980s, it's pretty remarkable, really, especially with what's going on today. So, anyway, so anything else? Ghlee? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Can I tell that story? It was through my sister, actually, that she was, what did I say, around 10, I think, and she was on a pair of stilts, and we lived near downtown, yeah, across from the library, and Fran used to go to the library all the time on, her bicycle, and saw my sister and a friend of hers. They were playing and on the stilts, and she took a picture. Obviously, that's what she did. She really was first and foremost a street photographer, I think. But she took a picture and then asked my mom if she would like the picture. And yes, my mom said, yes, of course. And so it just started from there. And I just think there was something about Fran that she made friends so easily, and real friends, deep friends, friendships that just were almost magical. And we loved Fran in our family, and it was wonderful to have her being part of it all those years. I can tell a couple things special to me is that, I meet people, and there's people here in the audience I know who Fran took their wedding pictures, and people, it's one of the first things they tell me, oh, well, Fran took my wedding pictures. And so I say, just, kind of make a joke of it, but I say, well, Fran took my prom pictures.
And wedding.
And wedding pictures too. Right. So anyway, it goes back, to that, and spent a lot of time with Fran, particularly my siblings, because we got married in 1970, and that's when I moved away from Newburyport, and we've only been back almost 5 years now, but we moved away, and so we didn't see Fran the way the rest of the family did so much, but we corresponded, and always Christmas Eve. Always Christmas Eve. That, was just a tradition. And even after, the transition, I think that was probably that first Christmas that we saw Fran as a woman was right at Christmas, at Christmas Eve type of thing. So, and anyway, it's wonderful, and she had so many relationships with so many people, and I've learned things since I've been here that I didn't know about Fran, and one was I've had at least 2 families tell me that Fran lived with them for a while, and I wasn't aware of that. I guess I just, as a kid maybe, I wasn't aware, that was happening. So, and I know that she had wonderful studios that were really, how do I say it? It was almost a gift that she could use these studios type of thing, which is really special. And her last one, she called The Digs, and there's a piece about it in the book. And she loved it. She absolutely loved that. It's a little cabin in a knoll, and she had her garden, and she grew pumpkins, and she went to Topsfield and won awards for how many pounds? 800 pounds? No, I don't think it was quite that, but close. She got third place one year, and things like that. She, in the end, she really loved gardening. She loved all the squirrels and the chipmunks and all of that she fed, and she did a lot of folk art, and she had made statue people type things out in the yard, and my understanding is it was from styrofoam cups. So it's amazing. There's pictures of them in here too. And she named everything, her cars, her chipmunks, you name it, they had a name. And we were talking about cars at the firehouse thing that was done a couple weeks ago. And somebody asked about the names. Do you know the names of all Fran's cars? And I looked, and I couldn't find them, but I'm going to keep looking. But I know Ralph was one that she had for a long time. And when I first started doing my research and going through everything, and I'm seeing these people's names, and I'm not understanding what it has to do with what she was talking about at the time. So anyway, she's a very interesting person.
I have a relate to Fran in the fact that I do a lot of walking around. I say, come for a walk with me. And she did a marvelous job for the city, if you want to say. But really what I wanted to share was that I'm sitting in the audience, and I was so appreciative and believing in this city that in 1980s that a transgender happening, and everybody embraced her. And it's a beautiful thing. And I just wanted to, it's one of the beauties of Newburyport, I think. We're a very welcoming and beautiful community. And that was an example of that, but that's just me. Oh, one last thing. So I'm doing a talk in an hour from now about if this house could talk. And one of the houses, their poster said that Fran lived there. And it was on Olive Street. And so we're highlighting about 15 houses. And I put that one up there just because I wanted everybody to be able to see that. Thanks.
So stick around. I have to just thank Frank and Colleen. We're not over yet, but Colleen told me that she never talks about Fran without somebody in the room telling a story about their relationship with Fran. Now, I did not know Fran, just a little, we overlapped a little bit when I was a teenager at the end of her life. But I wanted to tell a story about Colleen and Frank. So, Colleen and Frank, I met Colleen and Frank through Sharon's Spiel dinner at the library. They invited me over to their home, shared these incredible images with me, and it's partly in my capacity at the Museum of Old Newbury and partly as a Newburyport resident. And I came back, Frank came over to my office and gave me a slide that said George Poor on it. Fran had taken a picture of my great uncle. My great uncle was a World War II veteran. He was grievously injured in Okinawa. He lost the back of his head, one of his eyes, a number of his fingers, part of his ear. My memory of him is being a very sort of odd, unglamorous person, and I think that was sort of the way he was treated in society, and I'm ashamed of this, but in our family to a certain extent. Fran took a picture of my Uncle George, and this brought me to tears and still does, with his little dog standing in a ray of sunlight from the back. And it is a beautiful image. And it was such a gift to me from both of you, from Frank and Colleen, and a gift from the past to my Uncle George Poor, who was walking in a ray of sunlight with his little dog. And this is, to me, is the power of photography. It's the power of art. It's the power of Fran. And it's the power of you two. So I want to thank you so much for everything you've done. And I want to say, personally and professionally, I think we need to keep these images in Newburyport. We need to celebrate them here, and we should all be part of that process. So thank you all so much, and thank you so much. I think we have time for one more comment. Ghlee.
Hi, I'm Ghlee Woodworth. I just wanted to share my late father, Todd Woodworth, was longtime friends with Fran. And Fran talked to my father about what was going on in her life, and he was very worried about her. And I remember him telling me that, I'm worried about Fran staying in Newburyport. And Fran said, no, Todd, this is my home. Newburyport is my home, and I'm staying. And so, of course, my father was happy that she was staying, but there was those concerns. Two, if you want to visit Fran, she is buried in the Newburyport Veterans Cemetery at the corner of Auburn and Pond. And so go say hello to Fran. She's closer to one of the walls, okay? She has a military marker.
All right, can we have a big round of applause for Frank and Colleen?